This is a very special segment that we've been looking forward to for some time here. So I've asked Moira to join me because we've given lots of time, and I'm interested in Moira's input here as well. Richard Wurmbrand is no stranger to many people around the world. He's written several books. I'm holding here perhaps his most famous book, over 3 million copies sold, Tortured for Christ, a story of 14 years of imprisonment in a Romanian prison, mainly because of his stand against Marxist Leninism and the dominating rule of the communist regime in his country. And in writing that book, he suddenly became very, very well known around the world and has written several others. I have one here entitled Alone with God, another one, Christ on the Jewish Road, written by Richard Wurmbrand, who is Jewish as well as a believer in Jesus, From the Lips of Children, 100 Prison Meditations, and Marx and Satan. And these books are available in bookstores. I think many of you have seen them in several bookstores in Canada. And so will you please welcome Dr. Richard and Sabina Wurmbrand. Welcome, Dr. Wurmbrand. There's so much to talk about, and I was saying to you before the program, I have heard of you so often, and this is the first chance I've had to meet you. And I want you to tell me your story. I know you've told it hundreds and maybe perhaps thousands of times before, but many, many people have yet to hear your story. Simply because it's such a remarkable story, and of course you've written this classic book, Tortured for Christ, about it. Can you just give us a sort of a brief overview of your life in a communist prison and why you were there?
Well, one day I walked to the church. I was already a pastor.
This is in Romania?
In Romania, yes. The communists are very at power. And on a Sunday morning I walked to the church. We don't drive to the church because we have no cars. I've never had a car in my life, neither a bicycle. We walked, and then a van of the secret police stopped near me. 4 men jumped out of the car and pushed me inside. I was kidnapped. There are no warrants of arrest or something like this. And I had to disappear from the face of the earth for 14 years. The first thing which occurred into my mind in that moment was that the words "don't fear" occur in the Bible 366 times, once for every day of the year. And because there exists extra day of the leap year, it is not 365 times, but 366. And I have been kidnapped on the 29th of February. And I said to myself, well, I have motives not to fear. Yeah. This day is also covered, and I began to smile. Now, when I began to smile, they got frightened, because they had to submit me to interrogations, and they believed that I've gone mad. Now, who smiles when the communists kidnapped him? They believed that I had a nervous shock. They asked me, "Why do you smile, sir?" I said, "Because of the promise which I have." "What promise do you have?" And since they were very sure that I've gone mad, we had this promise that we don't have to fear. And Jesus is a gentleman. He has told us that we don't have to fear, and he keeps his words. There were nothing to be feared.
Now, if I can just ask you this. You were married at the time?
Surely.
Did you have children?
Yeah, I had children.
Now, Mrs. Wurmbrand, he wasn't fearing. What about you? How did you feel about this? Did you know that your husband had been kidnapped, or did it take a few days to discover?
How I felt. Thousands and thousands of women, Christian women, were in the same situation as I was, many times in tears, no possibility of any work because the husband was in prison, the children from the school just thrown out. How I felt at this time, it was a very, very hard time, and very soon afterwards, as the Christian women took the place of the Christian men in church, while the men were put in prisons, the Christian women came forward and took their place in the church. The communists were not prepared for it. When they saw that the Christian women meant it, that they loved the Lord and they worked in the place of the men, very soon thousands of women were arrested, and among them I myself went to prison, but surely not in the same prison. In another prison, and so years and years we did not know and not see each other.
I was going to ask that question. Were you able to communicate at all?
14 years we did not know about each other.
So you didn't know if you were alive or dead?
No, we knew. She was told officially that I have hanged myself in prison. They wish to produce in her depression and melancholy. But I have a little bit to modify what she has said. We don't always feel compassion for a man. You can't feel compassion for everybody. But we have to show compassion. We can't feel always joyous, but we have to show our joy in the Lord. She wept, and she had this sadness. After 8 years in jail, I met for the first time a brother who had been recently arrested, and I asked him, do you know something about my wife? She had been released in the meantime. I asked, do you know something about my wife? Yes, I have been in your home. I saw your wife. And I asked, what is my wife doing? He said, she smiles and she sings. There was another side. She also wept and had her sadness, but she knew it is her duty to show and to communicate to others joy. In this connection, I wish to tell you one of the most beautiful episodes which I lived while I was in jail. The first years we were in solitary confinement, but then we were put in big common cells, in a cell with 200 prisoners perhaps. It was hell on earth, you know. Dirty and hunger and beatings and whatever you like. Impossible to sleep with 200 in the same room and so on. And they were men of all kinds of categories. They were former generals of the Royal Army and capitalists and professors, and they were rank and file, some peasants, some workers and so on. And we had in our cell a peasant. He knew his Bible well, but except the Bible, he probably had never read a book. And his ambition was to win for Christ a professor of the Royal Academy of Science who was in the same cell. Now, he did not know to explain many things. The professor put questions. He did not know the answers. And he said, sir, I don't know all these things, but I know I walk with Jesus, I talk with Jesus. Go away. And a circle of prisoners were around. Go away. What lies do you tell us that you walk with Jesus? Jesus has lived 2,000 years ago in Palestine. If I would show you a globe, you could not point where Palestine is. How can you walk with Jesus? He's dead since 2,000 years. And even if it would be as you Christians say, that he's somewhere in heaven, the heaven is also far away, millions of light years away. You can't walk with Jesus. You can't talk with Jesus. And he replied, you might be right in your thinking, but I walk with Jesus. I talk with Jesus. I see Jesus. Now the professor was really indignant. You dare to say that you see Jesus? Yes, sir, I see him. Listen, you say that you see Jesus. How does Jesus look to you? Wrathful, indignant, annoyed, bored, indifferent, happy to see you? Or does he sometimes smile to you? Sir, how did you guess? He sometimes smiles to me. Jesus smiles to you. What a stupid thing, he said to all the prisoners around. This man says that Jesus smiles to him. Jesus smiles to you. Yes, he does. Show me how Jesus smiles. I'm 80. That was the most beautiful episode in my life of 80 years. This farmer was very, very ugly, as we all were very ugly. We were hungry and we were beaten. We were all like scarecrows. Mm-hmm. We were only skin and bone with dark circles around our eyes, and we were unwashed and in this uniform of a prisoner. We were very, very ugly, unimaginably ugly. And his face began to shine. There are pastors in Canada for whom it is difficult to believe the whole Bible. Mm. We can believe the whole of it. We can believe the miracles because we have seen transfigurations as on Mount Tabor. This man was transfigured. He began to shine, and a gorgeous smile appeared on his face. I'm used to see smiles. My wife smiles much. I'm used to see smiles, but I've never seen such a beautiful smile. There was so much yearning in the smile, and so much compassion for the lost soul whom he had near him, and so much desire to see him saved, and so much love and so much goodness. The whole splendor of heaven was in this smile. And the professor bowed his head and said, sir, you have seen Jesus. Mm. When I became a Christian, I have been taught every day read a page of the Bible and read every day the life of a saint and of a martyr. I have done it and I do it even now. And I had read in times of old about all such kind of happenings. And with some skepticism, was it really so? But now I saw for myself such things, transfigurations, and here was a simple man, but he knew he must have had in his heart much sadness. Who knows where his wife was and his children, and he had been beaten and so on. But he had a task. He had a task to bring in this valley of shadow of death the smile of heaven. So whatever happens in my heart, you can't not be troubled. Jesus has been troubled. He tells us, don't be troubled. But he himself has known the trouble. He himself has wept tears. But he knows that he had a task. And he went towards the Garden of Gethsemane singing, that's also said. He might have thought about his blessed mother who will weep on this next day at the foot of the cross. He had many motives of sadness, but he had to bring the song of heaven on earth. And I have been in jail, and my wife in her female jail. We have been with men who suffered much, but they knew I have a task to bring the smile of heaven, and they were the comforters. We brought songs there, and we sang in prison every day. Canadian Christians usually sing once a week on Sunday. Now, every bird sings every day. Nightingales, larks sing every day, and it's no sense for a Christian to sing only once a week. And we sang being in prison, and we sang being accompanied by musical instruments. The communists have been very nice to us. They know that Christians like it to sing being accompanied by musical instruments. So they gave to every one of us a musical instrument. In Canada, you don't get one. No. But we got. We got not violins or mandolins, but we got chains at our hands and at our feet. And we could sing with these chains. The day cling clang, the day cling clang, which the Lord has made. Now this was a day which the Lord has made. A day of beating, a day of torture, a day of hunger, a day of deprivation of everything, of not knowing if you have a wife, if you have a mother, if the children have not died, you knew nothing. But I have a task. I have a task to bring a song in this sad world.
Did you feel anger, bitterness about your situation?
No, it is 14 years is a long time.
It's a long time.
A long time for me. For the communist regime, it's not much. I've been a lucky fellow, only 14 years in jail. In West China, Brother Chung Fu Chang is still in jail since 41 years. And in Albania, the brother Meshkala died just 2 months ago after 43 years in jail at the age of 84. You pass through different states of heart, during this. But I don't remember ever to have had desire of revenge or hatred. I pitied the communists. I loved them, and I did the little which I could to bring the communists and even torturers to Christ, and I believe that all Christians had these feelings.
Dr. Wurmbrand, just a few months ago, I was speaking to a conference in Stuttgart, Germany, of pastors 40 years of age and under. And half of them were from Eastern Bloc countries. For some of them, it was their first time in the West. It was an education for me to spend time with them. But they told me something that you've already hinted at just by telling us what happened in that jail. They told us that in communist countries today, there is a very strong and healthy, active Church of Jesus Christ, growing and baptizing and ministering. In fact, they said they believed there were more believers behind the Iron Curtain than there were in Western Europe.
Sure.
Now, can you explain why that is?
Well, first of all, about the facts. China, to take this country, before the communists take over, had 3.5 million Christians, according to the statistic. You know there's a difference between statistic and being a Christian. But Catholic and Protestants, everybody together who confessed Christ was 3.5 million. Now, after 40 years of fierce terror in China, the evangelicals alone are 50 million.
50 million.
And the Catholics have grown too. We don't have a figure for them. In Russia, Moskovsky Novosti, which is one of their greatest magazines, like Time in America, has on the front page, explosion of religiosity in our country. And they have huge meetings there. They just don't care about the government. They do it. In my homeland, Romania, also, the churches are jammed. How does it happen? Well, the blood of the martyrs is the seed which makes the church to grow. I have had the privilege of being with martyrs. I have touched martyrs. And it was like the touch of their garment heals. And their faces shone. And every word, there were some of them simple men, not theologians and so on. But they had such beautiful words, and even towards their torturers. And love can penetrate as radioactive elements penetrates through a wall of lead, you know. So it penetrated this love in their prayers, and a miracle has happened now in communist countries. They believe that they've destroyed Christianity. It is blooming in communist countries nowadays.
Moira, you're sitting over there shaking your head and being impressed, I can see, by all that you're hearing here, as I'm sure all of us are. Maybe you have a question you'd like to ask either Dr. or Mrs. Wurmbrand.
As I sit and listen, it's like reading the biography of one of the great saints in our faith. You know, as you're talking, Dr. Wurmbrand, I'm thinking of Corrie ten Boom's words, you know, in the deepest, darkest place in her life, and darker than most of us could even imagine, a living hell in a German concentration camp. She said that when she was living, she often wished she could go back, as horrible as it was, because she said never before and never after that experience did she sense God's presence so near or hear his voice so clearly. And you're talking about a royal commission in a horrible place that God entrusted to you, a ministry that many could become bitter about, that God would even ask them to endure such a thing.
Suffering offers you two possibilities. In suffering, you can become bitter or better. And Christians have become better. I will tell you about one. I know we don't have much time. But at a certain moment in jail, I got deadly sick, tuberculosis of the whole surface of both lungs and backbone tuberculosis and so on and so on. And I was near to death in a row. And I had to my right side a pastor, his name was Isku. He had been so beaten and tortured that he was also near to death, near to death. He was young. But he knew where he goes. And he spoke about Christ, about the world of angels, about heaven. He was happy, he knew where he goes. He was to my right side. To my left side was the communists who had tortured him, because the communists put in jail not only Christians and Jews. They put their own comrades too. They just hate everybody. And when they have a squabble about I don't know what, then one puts the other in jail and tortures him even to death. And so it happens that the torturer, the communist torturer, was in the same cell with the one whom he had tortured to death, he himself also being tortured to death. And he could not die. During the night he would awake me and say, Pastor, please a prayer for me. I can't die. I've committed such horrible crimes. And then I saw a scene. It was worthwhile to sit 14 years in prison to see only this one scene as some ascend the Himalayas under great difficulties, but to see the beauty there on the peak. I've been on the peaks. I saw this thing. And this pastor called two other prisoners, and leaning on their shoulders, slowly, slowly, he passed my bed, sat down on the bedside of his murderer, caressed him on his head. Here in America, how thrifty are people with caresses? We don't caress. We rather chide our wives than to caress them. By the way, husbands must be caressed too. And who caresses a mother? Who caresses a grandmother? I have seen a man caressing his murderer. And he spoke with him such beautiful words. You have been young. You did not know what you do. I have forgiven you from all my heart, and I love you. I say I love you, but he said it like Romeo speaking with Juliet. Really, a man in love. I love you from all my heart. And I can assure you that all Christians whom you might have tortured, they all have loved you. And if we who are only human can love like this, the more so Christ, who is Son of God, who has taught us love, how much he loves you. He wishes you to be in heaven with him much more than you wish to be in heaven with him. He wishes to forgive you much more than you wish to be forgiven. He wishes to save you much more than you wish to be saved. You only come back to him. And I overheard in this cell in which there was no possibility of privacy, the murderer confessing all his murders to the murdered. The murdered telling him about the forgiveness of God. They prayed together, they embraced each other, and then the pastor went back to his bed. They died both the same night. It was a Christmas Eve in which it was not celebrated that 2,000 years ago Jesus was born in Bethlehem. He was born right on that
born
evening.
right there, the very day that the man died. Just like Jesus with the thieves on one side and the other, and the one saying, remember me this day in paradise. And I just want to thank the Wurmbrands for being here, and also to say to you, this may be an awesome and astounding story you've just listened to, just listened to. Only Jesus can provide us the ability to love those who hate us. It's only that miraculous work of the Spirit that can do it.
cannot tell you.
I wish we had more time, Dr. Wurmbrand. We don't. We're just about to go off the air. But please, if you would like to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, today is the day to do it. Call our counselors. Let them know that you've prayed, God be merciful to me, a sinner. And they'll respond to you and refer you to a local church. Until next time, thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.